September 22nd, 2020, Planning Commission of Sebastopol. And first we'll start with a roll call. Directors. Okay.
Chair Fernandez, I will just start at the beginning. Chair Fernandez,
Here.
Vice Chair Fritz.
Here.
I will just start at the beginning. Chair Commissioner Dauch.
Here.
Commissioner Ottinger,
Here.
Commissioner Lindenbush,
Here.
Commissioner Haug,
Here.
and Commissioner Wilson is excused. Commissioner Kelly. And actually, there's a call-in user. We will wait a moment to see if that is her, since she usually calls in. And for the call-in user that just pulled in, we're doing roll call. Is this Commissioner Kelly by chance?
Correct.
Thank you. All right, so we have all commissioners except for Commissioner Wilson.
Okay. And consistent with Executive Order N-29-20, in-person participation by the public will not be permitted, and no physical location from which a public may observe the meeting will be available. Remote public participation is allowed using the Zoom program. Okay, and we'll go on to item number 3, approval of minutes of August 25th, 2020. Is there any changes or additions to those minutes? Okay, hearing none, ask for a motion to approve minutes.
I move we approve the minutes.
Okay, we have a motion. Can I have a second?
Both meetings or the first or second?
Just the first one, the August 25th.
Just the first.
Yeah.
Second, Linda Kelly.
Okay, thank you. We have a first and second. All in favor? Should we do a roll call?
And yeah, let's just do a roll call since we have people on the phone and people not on the
Okay.
phone. Chair Fernandez,
Yes.
Vice Chair Fritz,
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly,
Yes.
Commissioner Ottinger,
Yes.
Commissioner Lindenbush,
Aye.
Commissioner Haug,
Aye.
Commissioner Dauch.
Abstain.
Thank you very much. So that passes 6-0 with one abstention.
And then also with item number 3, we'll go with the September 8th, 2020 minutes. Are there any changes or additions to those minutes? Okay, good job on the minutes. They're looking good. All right, can I have approval for the roll call for September 8th, 2020 minutes?
You want a motion
Sure.
first?
Motion, yeah.
So moved.
Second.
We have motion and second. Roll call for approval.
Chair Fernandez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Fritz,
Aye.
Commissioner Kelly,
Abstain.
Commissioner Ottinger,
Aye.
Commissioner Lindenbush,
Aye.
Commissioner Haug,
Aye.
and Commissioner Dauch.
Aye.
And that is 6-0 with one abstention as well.
Okay, thank you. Move on to item number 4, comments from the public on items not on the agenda. Do we have any anyone in public that wishes to make a comment on items not on the agenda?
Okay, and if you are a member of the public and wish to make a comment, you can either raise your hand if you know how to do that, or you can use the chat to myself, the host, to let us know that you have any comments. And while we're waiting for that, I will note that we have not received any comments for items not on the agenda to date via email.
Okay.
Okay, and I do not see any members of the public
Okay.
wishing to speak.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and close public comment on that. Go on to item number 5, statements of conflict of interest. Does anyone have a statement of conflict of interest for any of the items on the agenda? Okay. Okay, moving on. Item number 6, consent calendar. We have one item, temporary use permit amendment, Head West Marketplace, the Barlow.
And since this is consent, if you can just read the description for that, and if no one acts to pull it, call for a motion.
Okay. Project number 2020-014. The applicant has requested an amendment to increase the number of booths, extend the market to the end of 2021, and to modify the layout. This project was first acted on by the commission at their meeting on August 25th, 2020.
I move to approve the consent calendar.
A second.
Okay, motion and a second. Do
All
a
right.
roll call.
Thank you. Commissioner Dauch,
Aye.
Commissioner Haug,
Aye.
Commissioner Kelly,
Aye.
Commissioner Lindenbusch,
Aye.
Commissioner Ottinger,
Aye.
Vice Chair Fritz,
Aye.
and Chair Fernandez.
Aye.
And that is approved. The temporary use permit is approved on consent on the 7-0 vote.
Okay. And we'll move on to item 7A, which we have a conditional use permit, tentative parcel map variance, project number 2019-027. This is a public hearing for an application from Mark Reese requesting approval, a conditional use permit to operate an automated car wash at 6809 Sebastopol Avenue, a tentative parcel map to subdivide an existing 1.51 acre lot into 3 commercial parcels, and a variance to allow a reduction in the minimum floor area ratio below the requirement of the municipal code, and a proposed mitigated negative declaration for CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act. The project includes the construction of an automated car wash with upstairs office space and the installation of a driveway to Barnes Avenue. The existing tire shop and oil change operation will continue on site and are not affected by this application. The Planning Commission is advisory on this application, and his recommendation will be forwarded to the City Council for final action. And for this on to our planning director.
Thank you, Chair Fernandez. That was a great introduction to the project. I am going to introduce Dave Hogan from M Group. He is one of the city's on-call consulting planners. If you recall, we have had a couple other projects that they have helped us handle, as well as some intern staffing before Alan came on board. Dave Hogan is a principal planner at M Group and has been assisting with this project. The project originally started in 2017, and we got the actual application a little bit over a year ago. So I will, with that, hand it off to Dave.
Thank you, Carrie. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, that was a great introduction, and so there's a whole lot of things that I was going to say I don't have to. So let me kind of go to showing the commission where the project is located, and I'll kind of walk you through this. Can you all see the mouse on the screen? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. It's located at 6809 Sebastopol Avenue. The red outline in the middle of the screen shows where the project is located in terms of the parcel map. The green square is where the car wash is going to go. And for reference, I've put a label by where the CVS building is to kind of show you where everything is supposed to be located. And I will kind of refer to this as I go along. This was presented to the Planning Commission in September 2017 as an advisory project. And the Commission's comment focused on limiting the left turns onto Barnes Avenue from Sebastopol Avenue. I should probably go back because that's going to be more descriptive. Also concerned with the noise from the car wash, as well as the proximity to residential uses, the concern with increased traffic on Sebastopol Avenue, and then the importance of reducing water use. All of these criteria, I think, did end up being folded into the municipal code section that deals with car washes. To answer your question, and now I'll go to the second one. As you can see, there is a driveway proposed here at the southern end of the site from Barnes Avenue, which will actually improve site access. Patrons from the tire shop or the Express Lube will be able to access the car wash facility without going onto Sebastopol Avenue. A noise study was done on the project, and I will be going through the details of that a little later. But I will summarize and say that the unmitigated noise did not meet the local standards, and the applicant has included a noise silencing equipment on the actual blower themselves. There was a traffic study done, and I'll to summarize the results of that a little later also. And then the project is proposing to reuse about 80% of its wash water. Racing through the applicant is proposing to parcelize the existing lot into 3 parcels. Parcel 1 around the tire shop, parcel 2 around the Express Lube, and parcel 3 will be for the car wash. The comment of the applicant is that he's doing this for financing reasons, which is totally reasonable. But because it's going to be a required legal parcel, a recorded legal parcel, staff is recommending that a maintenance and access agreement be in place for all 3 lots to allow for shared parking, shared access, shared landscape maintenance, and shared use of the trash enclosure. And let me get back to where I was. Okay. Let me go to my next. So the only challenging part of this is the proposed variance. The municipal code for this particular commercial district, when the general plan was updated, was really envisioning mixed use, higher intensity development, which means the new lot would be required to have a minimum floor area ratio of 1, or basically 100%, which would require a 22,000 square foot building located on this 22,000 square foot lot. Given that this is an infill lot on an existing center, that didn't seem reasonable, and that seems to be a condition that is unique enough to the property to justify the approval of a variance. The existing the proposed 2-story building is going to be about 4,400 square feet in total. That counts the equipment area, the wash bay, and then the upstairs office and equipment rooms. So the project is consistent with the general plan land use map and is consistent with the zoning ordinance. And I'm going to get back out of this for a second. There we go. There are specific car wash standards, and those are discussed in the staff report. That is, the site layout and design should avoid queuing and drying areas in walkways or adjoining streets. And as you can see from the earlier exhibit, they have sufficient space on site to allow queuing of vehicles. The drying area is actually in the parking lot of the project to the west of the car wash building. The automatic drying facilities are within the building completely. The vacuuming areas are not adjacent to residential, and they are relatively screened from the public, considering they're on the back of the lot. The noise from this has been mitigated with the use of the silencing equipment, and the applicant and his team are available to explain that in more detail. And the car wash, they are committing to reusing approximately 80% of the wash water in their operation. Now, as we were going through the project for parking, because of the shared access and the square footage of the building, they're required to have 20 parking spaces. We are not counting the drying spaces nor the lube bays or the tire shop bays as parking. The surface parking on the site will be 28 spaces, which is more than enough to meet the 20. Also with 20 spaces are required to have 4 bicycle spaces. There are 2 on site now, and there's a condition of approval to add 2 more. We did do the traffic assessment as at the 3 intersections. Let me go back and share the screen again. Share. The 3 intersections are here at Sebastopol Avenue and Petaluma, Sebastopol and Morris, and Petaluma and Abbott. The only change was in the morning peak at Sebastopol and Morris, where it went from level of service B to level of service C. Now, I will point out that using level of service to assess CEQA impacts, you can't do anymore under state law, but it can still be used by the city to assess local operational issues, and that's how we've used it in this case. The initial study that was done did not identify any significant or unmitigatable impacts as a result of the project. We have 4 mitigation measures. Because they're going to be doing some trenching and digging, it's possible that they may identify cultural resources. So for the inadvertent discovery, there's a measure requiring them to notify the city when that happens, so that we can determine whether or not they're significant or whether or not the Native American Heritage Commission needs to get involved. The other 3 measures all relate to noise. And one of them is done in effect through the project design now, that is to reduce the operational noise from the drying unit to a point where it doesn't cross the property line. And that's also noise mitigation too. We had a subsequent noise study prepared to evaluate whether or not the noise levels were going off site. And the conclusion of the study that there should be a barrier at least 6 feet in height between the corner of the building, and let me go to the site, from this corner of the building, which is the northeast, up to the corner of the adjacent building. So there will be a barrier there to block any noise from going onto the adjacent site, or at least the noise that would exceeds the noise standards. Most of the noise on the site now is controlled by the road noise. It's the road noise in Sebastopol Avenue that is the dominant source of noise on the site, based upon our experience. The mitigated negative declaration was circulated for public review between August 20th and September 20th. We received 1 comment from the public, and that was a tenant in the office building to the east, concerned with noise levels. As a result of that, I did go out to the site, did go up onto the second floor to hear what noise was available from the outside. And I will tell you, it was extremely quiet. Once I got upstairs, you couldn't even hear the road noise from Sebastopol Avenue. The office in question was the one that shares space with the Chimera Art Facility. And there's a door from this office down into the art facility. The subsequent noise study was looking at, and there was a comment concerned of table 8 in the noise study, wondering why their interior noise was not assessed. And based upon the technical results of the study, it was felt that the exterior noise environment, either the pool area at the Sebastopol Inn or the outdoor patio at Pete's Coffee next to the CVS, or even hikers on the Joe Rodata Trail. And then of course, the closest residence, which is quite a way to the south. Based upon the results of the noise study, it was determined that the project was not going to have a significant impact on the environment. And based upon that, staff's recommending that the commission recommend to the council that a mitigated negative declaration be approved for the project. Now, in terms of the findings for the project, The conditional use permitted is consistent with the general plan and is consistent with the zoning, not only the use requirements, but also with the special requirements that apply to car washes. To ensure that it's operationally a good neighbor and compliant, staff is recommending 4 additional measures, and these are included in the conditions in condition of approval 78 in the Planning Commission resolution, which is to limit access to the site from Sebastopol Avenue onto Barnes Avenue, basically requiring access directly from Barnes. Limiting the hours of operation between 7 in the morning and 7 at night. Making sure that the parking spaces on site are not occupied with storage trailers or containers or sheds. And then a requirement that employees be allowed to park on site. Staff has included an additional, what I would call a good neighbor policy plan. And that would describe how the owner of the operation would ensure kind of good neighbor status with adjacent uses and provide a mechanism by where if there is a noise issue, they would have a chance to resolve that between themselves. The planning director would approve that prior to the project being built. The variance requirements, the applicant has submitted a lengthy response to that, but based upon the information they've provided, the existing auto center in what the general plan envisions as a mixed-use commercial zone is an unusual and is considered to be an extraordinary condition, and is one of the reasons that staff is supporting the variance. The granting the application is also important and necessary to sustaining the enjoyment of the property right. And based upon the operating conditions of approval, staff does not believe that the application will be materially adverse to the community. With that, staff's recommendation is the commission open the public hearing, take public testimony, and then recommend that the city council certify the negative declaration, approve the conditional use permit subject to the attached conditions, approve the variance, and approve the tentative parcel map subject to the attached conditions. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm available to answer any questions. And sorry for going so long.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Hogan. Questions for Mr. Hogan or Planning Director Swanstrom, staff?
I have one question.
I think you're muted, Everett.
I can't.
Thank you. Vice Chair Fritz, I think you have a question, and we'll go down the line here.
Okay. Yeah. So it's like one of the conditions of approval has to do with the flood elevation. It's condition 12 on page 8 of the conditions.
Yes.
So one part of that, and some, I can't remember if that's in the condition or someplace in the report, it discusses the fact that the grading plan shows the finished floor at 78, but the finished floor is required to be 80 feet. And maybe this is a question for the applicant, but I'm just wondering if that's going to be an issue for them to raise that finished floor, 2 feet and still get the rest of the grading and everything and accessibility to work on the site. Is that something that you can answer? Or should I hold that for the applicant?
I think I would save that for the applicant.
Okay. And then there's a question. So in the initial study, this has to do with the noise section of the initial study. There was a figure given for distance from the source, and one of the distances was like 50 feet. I can't remember. There were a couple of them. I'm just wondering, how are those distances? Like, what is there a standard for that? Why was it 50 feet and not 20 feet or 75 feet, or what's the magic with the 50-foot distance for evaluating the noise impact.
I am going to have to get back to you on that one. Let me, do you know which page?
So yeah, actually, now I see. So it's so in the staff report, it's page 8 of the staff report. So it discusses 77 decibel at a distance of 10 feet.
Oh, okay.
And 63 decibels at a distance of 50 feet from the entrance and exit of the car wash. I'm just wondering where those numbers come from. Is that the general plan, or where does that evaluate? How's that?
That came from the noise technical study. That was based upon their analysis and of the projected noise from the silencing, from the dryer silencing equipment. And based upon their technical recommendation, that they felt that would maintain the proper noise environment. That's a technical recommendation from Illingworth and Rodkin.
Is someone from Illingworth and Rodkin available to answer questions, or is this just something for the applicant to respond to?
Oh, I do not have Illingworth and Rodkin online to join this conversation. Perhaps the applicant can share some insight on it.
Okay. And then another initial study question on page 14 of the initial study is a section on greenhouse gases. And I'm just wondering if, because of the nature of the car wash, you know, and there will be potentially queuing of cars and idling of cars while they're waiting to go through the car wash. Is that something that gets evaluated as part of the greenhouse gas emissions section of the initial study?
Yes, there are Bay Area Air Quality Management District screening criteria that in effect, for small projects, their presumption is that you're not going to get a significant impact. So the philosophy is, rather than assess for every single project, the screening criteria, this project comes out well below the threshold. And for that reason, it's considered to be not an issue.
Okay. I'm sorry, now back to the conditions of approval, and you kind of brought this up, condition 78, which has to do with the turning from Sebastopol Avenue onto Barnes.
Yes.
One, I think that condition is worded a little backwards because it says, hold on a second. And this is on page 14 of the conditions.
Yes, I have it in front of me.
So it says vehicles leaving the site shall not make left turns from Sebastopol. I think it should be vehicles entering the site should not make left turns from Sebastopol Avenue onto Barnes Avenue. And then kind of related to that, my question is, how is that going to be prevented? Is there going to be signage or a barrier, or what's the applicant required to do to make sure that no one is turning left from Sebastopol Avenue? Because people do it now to get to CVS. So is there going to be something that's required of the applicant so that that does not happen?
And I can answer this one because I know it's come up before. Our engineering manager has worked with Caltrans to see if there's any way to get no left turn signage onto that road. However, the constraints of basically there's nowhere to put the sign and unfortunately was the response from them. And you know, the reality is, when you got to the site, other than a pavement marking, there really isn't a place to put a sign that wouldn't conflict with the sidewalks and things like that out there. We did put the condition on so that any you know, if people are giving directions to people on how to get to the car wash, how to enter it, that type of thing, that the intent is that the applicant provide directions that don't include the left turn from Sebastopol onto Barnes. So in some ways it's a reminder that that's not an allowed turn because there's no way to easily sign it on the street.
But people are allowed to make a left turn from Sebastopol into the current facility, correct? Like there's nothing
Correct. Yeah.
stopping you from going to the tire shop or the express lube and turning left, and then you could make your way through the property to get back to the car wash if, you know, You said.
Yes, you would be allowed to come into the site from Sebastopol Avenue and make your way back to the car wash that way.
Okay. I think that's all my questions for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Dauch?
Thank you. Actually, Paul captured my primary question, so I will wait for hold my thoughts for now.
Okay. Commissioner Ottinger?
Yes, I'm going to have to read some notes about questions regarding what we were just talking about. Number 78. I'm still not clear whether you're talking about leaving from Benedetti Tire and turning left onto the highway, or whether you're talking about leaving the car wash, going right on to Barnett, to Barnes, and then turning left onto the highway. Because a person could leave by both means, and both of those left turns onto Sebastopol Avenue would be difficult and not warranted. So I think it's leaving, they should not attempt to turn left at any location onto the highway. That I think that language should be cleared up. If it is in fact leaving, I can see entering, they could want to turn left onto Bars as well. So perhaps the message is not turning left into Barnes or left out of Barnes or left, I suppose, left out of the tire place. But, I just think it needs to be cleaned up one way or the other, because I was very confused by it too. And I could see it applying to both entrance and exit sites.
I will make some adjustments and share those with the commission a little later before a motion is made.
Okay. My next
And
question is,
can I make one note on that? I believe currently if you're at because we can't condition the oil change and the tire center, you are allowed to make a left turn out of the main entry onto Sebastopol Avenue. It's difficult, and a lot of people will go right and then around the block to do it, especially during certain times of day. I know I've done that when it's more during the rush hour, but right now there is a left turn allowed out for the other uses.
yeah, I can understand that. So
Okay.
basically, I think it was just reading oddly. So perhaps just even restructuring the sentence diagram would make more sense. Another
Yes,
question.
Commissioner, that may be a case where a picture is worth 1,000 words. But I think I fixed the chaos of that. So did you have another question?
Can I just jump in? Because I
Sure.
believe, and I could be wrong, maybe Carrie, you know this, but I believe on Barnes, there's a sign that says no left turn, or it says right turn only, or something like that.
When you're coming north on Barnes
Going
up
north
to
on
Sebastopol,
Barnes to
I believe
Sebastopol
I believe that is signed, yes.
I don't think that. So yeah, I don't think you're allowed to do that. And I think it is signed currently that way.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
My next question is, they were talking about nearby residences, and I just felt to be accurate, I do believe there's a closer residence than the 700 feet. And I think well, actually, this question regards, at one point in the documents, I saw 600 feet, and another document, I saw 700 feet. And I just thought, for clarity, and I'm sorry I can't tell you where that is right now because it's so hard to be on the computer and in my notes at the same time. But maybe that should just be looked at and cleaned up before the final presentation to the council. My other question is, I think that there's a legal residential unit at 130 Sebastopol Avenue at Burnett. That's the building, the gold building directly across from CVS. I don't think they have any outdoor spaces, but they certainly do have windows and doors that open onto a Juliet balcony of sorts. So I think for clarity, that should be included in the list in the sound study because it does affect them. And I think there's also another legal unit at 100 Brown Street, which I think is even closer. I just, judging, it was hard to tell. And I don't think they have any outdoor space either too, but they also have windows and doors, and they're also on the second and third floors, these two facilities.
I will look into that and verify or clarify that accordingly.
Okay. I'll check that I asked those questions. I think the others. At this point, are we discussing questions about all the materials or just generally things?
I would say question of staff or Mr. Hogan at this point.
Okay. Okay, then that's it for staff at this point.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Lindenbush.
Thank you, Chair Fernandez. I have no questions for staff at this time.
Okay. Commissioner Hogg.
Thank you. I'm kind of looking at the site on Google Earth, Google Maps, and I'm wondering, I didn't see it, but I could have missed it. How slow do you have to slow down to make a right if you're heading east on Sebastopol Avenue to go in to access the parking lot, the car wash?
I would say you'd have to be going fairly slow to turn into the auto center from Sebastopol.
So if cars are but they'd also, if they're accessing it, is there a chance that that would slow down traffic on the 12 because there's the stoplight is right there, so it's already metered going through that stoplight. So if you had someone that was if you had several cars slowing down to make a right to go into the car wash, will that impact the speed of traffic on 12? Because we already have substantial backup on Highway 12.
Potentially, yes. I suspect, though, most people are going to approach it from Barnes Avenue.
But they'd still have to slow down, and that's even closer to the traffic light.
Very likely, yes, ma'am.
It looks like, I mean, to me, it looks about between the traffic light and Barnes Avenue. Do you know how many feet that is?
Not right off the tip, right off the top of my head. I can look.
Because I was just wondering, to me, when I just eyeball it, which once again could just be an approximation, it looks to me between like 12 and 14 cars. So if you theoretically had 2 or 3 cars slowing down to make the turn into the car wash, it could impact the speed of traffic on the 12, causing further backup on Bodega Highway.
I am going into Google Maps myself right now to measure.
Okay.
So we're looking at the distance from Petaluma Avenue to the driveway, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Measured distance to the car wash entrance is right from the intersection of Petaluma and Sebastopol. It's about 500 feet to the entrance to the existing auto center.
Okay. And to Barnes Avenue is?
To Barnes, that's.
I measured that and it's about 220 feet, which is about a block, basically, which is obviously it is a block, but it's.
Do you know how many car lengths that is? I'm sorry, this is a crazy trivia question. How many car lengths is one's block?
It's about 20 to 25 feet for a car length, or car length plus space.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
when
my
you're going slowly.
experience.
So it's 8 to 10 cars, I would say, before you get to Barnes.
Okay.
And actually, your question about the how slow people need to go to make the right turn into the Benedetti Tire, the existing parking, the existing driveway, is probably something the applicant can advise on as well, since it's obviously it's been existing and they've been open for some time.
Any other questions, Commissioner Howell?
No, that's my only concern
Okay.
is causing further backup on the 12 right there.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Kelly,
Am I unmuted?
you are unmuted.
Okay, great. Again, I have questions around turning left onto Barnes, going west on Sebastopol. I remember our building official said that when we brought up an idea of maybe I know Caltrans wasn't, somehow they weren't clear that they were supposed to put in a no left there. So that was a whole other thing around CVS back in the day. However, he was mentioning, our building official, that maybe we could just get double lines put in there, double yellows. So that does indicate that you're not supposed to turn left. Does anyone recall that?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
And looking on Google Earth, it does look like across the intersection to Barnes, there are double yellows there now. So they have striped that. And then coming north out of it, looking at the photos, there is a right only arrow as you're coming to that from Barnes up to Sebastopol Avenue.
Okay. I know I go to work in the evening to Santa Rosa and around 3 o'clock. And currently when people are trying to turn left onto Barnes, going west on Sebastopol, not only will the person try and cross over, but then it holds up the traffic in both lanes, going and coming, in terms of going west and going east, to let that car through. And it does totally back up. And my concerns always were for time to allow our fire and our police services to be able to get through there. I think it's going to slow down our response time. My second question is I'm still not totally clear about how the traffic is supposed to enter the establishment. The last time we saw this, you were going to turn onto Barnes going west to get in and then come down to the entrance, but you weren't going to go through the business itself. So now I'm confused. And so what's the preferred way to the traffic flow? Is it supposed to go into the actual business, go past the other, the tire and the lube area, and then go to the back and queue in? It seems a little confusing to me. Because then if otherwise it forces folks to go to Barnes.
I mean, I know this is questions of staff, but the traffic report, page 18, highlights the entrance and exits, and it points out that the entrance is either through the existing facility or through Abbott and Barnes if you're coming on Hillsburg Avenue, or via Barnes Avenue. So I think that's the answer to the question, is those are the entry points.
Yes, that is correct.
You could also turn right onto Barnes without any problem. You're not slowing traffic up too much. So that we're not worried about. So then I'm going to switch over to the sound wall. Is this an okay to ask a question now about it?
Go ahead.
So the sound wall seems very short, and is there a reason why it doesn't go further north, and also go all the way to the end, the south part of the project of the car wash?
The car wash operation, the noisiest part is the drying function, and the drying function is at the north end of the building. As you come in, its car is washed, then it's dried. The reason it's fairly short is that the sound doesn't really bend back around and go south again at that point. We're more concerned with the sound radiating up to the north. And so the sound wall runs from the noise source, the car wash building, up to the corner of the building where the Chimera Art Facility is located. So the purpose of that is to keep the noise on the property and minimize the amount of noise that goes off site. That's the reason the wall is somewhat short. If the commission has concerns that they feel that the wall should be longer or higher, we can certainly include that recommendation to the city council.
And the building itself, as acting as a sound wall on the east side, it's built to reduce sound too, I imagine.
Yes.
Okay. Is that blocks, or how is that created?
I suspect that's a question for the applicant in terms
Okay.
of the specific materials they're going to use. It's my impression it's blocked, but I think we should all get a more accurate answer from the applicant's team.
And then my last question is, we received a letter from a neighbor from the other car wash on Healdsburg complaining that, yes, they put the doors in at the end, but when it opens up, the sound still comes out. And so, of course, I'm worried mostly to the north, to the facility to the east of this project.
Yes. You're getting into the realm of the design of the car wash drying equipment, and this may also be best posed to the applicant and his team. Because
Okay.
I know that's something that we've had a lot of discussion with about how to reduce the noise impacts from the dryer unit. And I think that's been a main item of discussion as this project went through. So I think they would be best questioned on that.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kelly. Most of my questions have been answered. I just want to make one question and a comment. So I believe that you can turn across a double yellow line. So you would have to add a double yellow line essentially to make it an illegal crossing. Isn't that correct? Commissioner or Planning Director? Yeah.
I believe that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point, because a double yellow is the same as a median barrier.
Right. So was there any discussion or research on possibly being able to do that?
I believe the engineering manager had looked at that, but I will certainly ask him again. I know he's continuing to coordinate with Caltrans on a number of items.
Okay, thank you. And then a question also regarding the left turn going west on Highway 12. Would it have affected the traffic study if that had been taken into consideration? In other words, that vehicles are allowed to turn left there, and if they was taken into consideration that some vehicles will be turning left, what effect would that have had on the traffic study?
The purpose of the study was to look at the traffic impacts at the 3 key intersections around the project site. I don't believe the focus of the study was to look at turning motions going left into the facility that you currently have now. I don't believe the study was looking at that.
Because that would certainly affect, as you point, the intersection number 2, I think you had labeled it at Morris in 12. Yes. And that was the only one that changed. And
yeah. And I think that I'm not sure how realistic the change is, because I think your peak hour traffic going eastward, I think the model assumed that, okay, it starts at 7, so you're getting car wash business at 7 in the morning when you've got commute traffic heading over toward Santa Rosa and 101. So as I looked at it, that's the reason I thought there was a change of level of service at that intersection, but it still complies with the city standard, which is ultimately what we were assessing the project on.
Okay, because I think it would it would affect, I think, the delay time there if there were vehicles stopping, waiting for other to go by, going east and then make that left turn. So I think that would certainly have an effect on the timing or how long it would take to get across that intersection. So.
Very likely.
Okay. Okay, so that's, I would like to, at this point, invite the applicant to make any comments. And I think there's a couple of questions from the commissioners as well on that.
Okay. Let's see, is James, you're on mute. There you go.
Hi, so I'm, can you hear me, everyone?
We can hear you.
Okay, so I'm James Jensen. I am the civil engineer for Mark. And in terms of the presenting the project, I don't have anything particular to add to what the staff report already presented. However, in response to the question about the raising the facility 2 feet to an 80 elevation, I understand that this building is technically floodable and that it can be constructed at a 78 with floodwaters entering and receding the structure, which is actually preferable because by doing that, we don't displace as much floodwater as we would by trying to raise everything 2 feet. So I understand that that is an option. I see the condition written the way it is, but I believe that the criteria for requiring the building to be elevated as it's written is in the event that the building is not flood proof. All the other questions that I've heard at this point are really geared towards tunnel vision. They'll be the constructor of the car wash, and I think they have answers for most of the questions I've heard. If there are any other site plan related questions,
Chair Fernandez, you muted.
attempt to answer.
Thank you for that. Any commissioners have any questions of the applicant? Okay. Yes, Commissioner here.
I do. I'm just curious as to which questions to ask. Mr. Jensen, are you interested in answering questions about the vapors that escape from the facility?
So if that is a question related to the car wash, then that will be for tunnel vision.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I think tunnel vision really has the lion's share of information for this meeting.
So they'll also discuss decibels with us
Correct.
and the
Yes.
sound studies.
Yeah, and water usage and that kind of thing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Is there a representative from Tunnel Vision available?
I believe it's Ed. If my memory serves me correctly, and Ed, you're muted. Well,
He's coming.
There we go.
Okay,
There he
Ed
is.
Blair, Tunnel Vision here to answer questions.
thank you.
Commissioner Ottinger, you go ahead and with your question.
Okay, good. I have a concern about the water vapor because from past car wash experience, we've discovered that that water vapor also has soap and soapy and greasy residues that land on property, buildings, windows, decks, lawn furniture, chairs, cars, etc., especially when there's a breeze. And So I'm wondering if there are any studies to determine what's actually in that water vapor.
No, as for the water vapors, they're pretty much captured within the wash bay itself. And there's no migrating of particulates that would go out, more specifically beyond the property boundaries.
Are there studies that show that?
No, not that I'm aware of.
I was wondering if it could be proved that there were vapors leaving, is it possible to modify the building in such a way that it could stop those? I just hard to imagine when the door opens that this aerosolized vapor isn't escaping. So
Yeah, I'm not aware of any studies that have focused in on this challenge.
okay. If there were, would the car wash owner normally be responsible for cleaning that material off of objects where it has landed? I guess you can't answer that because you don't know that it exists, right? Okay. Are you familiar with the equipment that has been installed? You've seen it in use at other sites?
I'm familiar with most sites in Sonoma County, yes.
Okay. Normally, when the dryer equipment is running, is the exit door closed or open?
Yeah, there's no planned exit door on this. The business plan, the profile of car wash that you're requesting is automatics, and that's completely different than the design car wash that Mr. Reese is planning here.
So I'm not sure what you're saying exactly.
But the car wash that you're referring to is a rollover automatic, as you would have up at Rotten Robbie, which this site and this configuration of car wash is completely different. It's not anywhere near the same equipment or configuration.
So I still don't understand the answer to my question. If the equipment is drying a car, is the door always closed?
No, there's no doors on the entrance or exit end of this car wash.
Oh, because in the illustrations that we saw of the building, there were doors.
Well, there's security doors at night.
So these doors aren't closed while the facility is functioning.
The doors are open, the facility is open.
And you're saying that there are no vapors escaping?
No.
So that answers some questions I had about the sound of the equipment itself. We get a reading of 91 dBA, less the 14 dBA from the silencer, and we come up with 77 dBA at 7 feet. Now, where is the silencer, or where is the sound equipment standing when it's recording that 77 dBA? Is it at the door?
I don't know where
Only
the
at 10 feet.
sound. I don't know where the sound study was. Normally, it's about 10 feet from the exit door.
So you
But in
believe
this
that
case, the
77 is
sound suppression portion of this proposed project is upstairs and not in the wash bay itself.
Oh, so the equipment is silenced, but not the blasting of the air down below.
The equipment is silenced.
Okay, but the receiver, you believe, is 10 feet from, say, the door of the lack of a door, the exit.
Yeah, we
the
would ask
facility.
the sound study specialists for that criteria.
Okay, then if the sound specialist is available, then I can ask those tonight.
I don't know if they are. They do have. Let's see. In the sound study, they do show, I'm at a loss for finding the page, but they show that it's consistent with being within tolerances.
Well, I have questions about that too, because again, as mentioned before, the next level is 50 feet away, and there are people right over the fence adjacent to a 2-story building where the sound is going to be hitting that building. We don't have any recording for what the sound will be there. It's important to note, for me, my point of view is that at that location, right over the 6-foot wall, they are protected from the sound of the traffic. So they're not really going to hear the traffic. So this is the sound that they will hear. And I feel like we're at a loss to know how that property is affected because we don't know the sound that they will be hearing right across the wall. And it sounds like you can't answer those questions. And I'm disappointed with that. Let's see if I have any other questions about the facility.
I think it's best answered by the sound study analysis people. You know, they show their diagrams and they show that they're consistent with the requirements of sound augmentation. In other words, we're within the boundaries of tolerance.
But since decibels are logarithmic, there's a big difference between one number and the next number. And so I get confused because up above the equipment, you say 10 feet from the equipment, we're assuming that's 10 feet from the door. It's 77 decibels. And with the silencer that that is with the silencer. And yet what's normally is acceptable in our plan is 70 decibels, but you're saying suddenly that with the silencer, the adjacent property is only experiencing 64 to 65 LBDQE, LEQ. And so I'm getting confused, but I'm wondering if it's also just barely 10 feet away. I'm wondering why that number is so much lower.
Again, you would have to talk to, and maybe they're on with us tonight as to their documentation.
Unfortunately, we did not arrange for Illingworth and Rodkin to be on our call tonight. So if the commission has questions regarding the technical nature of the analysis, as it sounds like you do, then we'll have to, if the commission needs more information, we'll have to arrange for them to come in and explain the details of the noise study.
Thank you.
You have any other questions, Commissioner, on your?
Yeah, I'm looking over my notes. Can I come back if I find something else?
Sure.
I don't want to.
Yeah, just let me know. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair Fritz, you have any questions?
Yeah, I just had a question about, just again, trying to understand this compared to, so you said it's not like the Rotten Robbie, it's something different. Is it anything similar to the Splash Car Wash in Santa Rosa? I mean, that's one that I'm familiar with. Can you kind of compare it to that, or?
Yeah, I can. The Splash Car Wash is different, and that is that we've identified the exit end or the blowers or the producers of sound, and so in Splash you would see 9 producers. I've worked on that site. It's equipment that we don't endorse. The difference between what we do and what is done there is that all the producers at Splash are in the wash bay down at car level, nearly at car level. What we do is we take all of our energy, all of our producers, and put them upstairs and out of mitigating sound migrations.
So what kind of, if the equipment is upstairs, you're relying on the building to kind of deaden the
That is
noise emitted. What do you, is this a concrete block building, or what is the material, or what is the?
Well, it's actually, as proposed, it's better than that. It's the ICF concept, which is a foam filled foam block with 9 inches of concrete cells, which help mitigate vibration and sound, which is even more in effect than is CMU block walls. The difference is the CMU block walls are 8 inches, we're 13 inches overall, 2 inches of foam on, or styrofoam on the outside, inside, with 9 inches of fill of concrete.
And so again, with that splash car wash, I mean, does that make, the equipment's upstairs, but obviously the car washing is happening down at the ground level. There are no doors on that facility either. And I've been there, and there's definitely water vapor escaping that facility.
Yeah, you
Both
water vapor, you're talking about, clean water. You're talking about spot-free rinse, which has no TDS. It's designed not to spot cars, or it's not resting and contaminating or coating, things at the exit. So that concept is probably not a reality.
And I don't think, my other questions are all kind of more detailed acoustic related. So I kind of wish we did have someone from Illingworth and Rock in here to answer more specific kind of questions about the acoustic side. So I don't have any other questions at this moment. Thanks.
Commissioner Dauch, do you have any questions?
No, not at this time.
Commissioner Ottinger, do you have other questions?
No, I don't.
Okay. Commissioner Lindenbush.
No questions at this time. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Commissioner Howell.
I'm sure this was already covered, but just to reiterate, I know that Vendetti does a great business in their tire portion and also their express lube portion. How many cars currently enter and exit the facility now?
Mark, are you able to give some dynamic on that? You're muted, but
Yeah, I just didn't know if any of my professionals were going to take over or not. Hi, everybody. So I would say that we probably average between both facilities anywhere between 75 to 125 cars per day.
Okay, and then I assume that you're going to dovetail in some of your existing customers through the car wash. I mean, to me, from a business perspective, that would make sense. So I'm wondering, what is the increased amount of cars that you think would be coming in and out of the facility due to the car wash? Because you're not offering gas, it's just car wash, correct?
That is correct. It's hard to anticipate how much we'll get because what our anticipation is, we pretty much have pooled a lot of people in Sebastopol. Of course, I'm born and raised here, so I've been looking for a good car wash for a long time, and so has everybody else. So typically they leave town to get their car washed. So we're hoping to obviously be able to draw from that, but our customers also, one of our highest requested amenities to add to our facility is, when are you going to be able to wash our car? And so we're hoping that we'll be able to grab a large percentage of our already clientele. To answer your question more specifically, it could be as many as 50 to 75 cars more per day to the car wash.
Okay, so let's say 50% of your existing clientele use the car wash. Would that make it pencil for you, or do you need to have a full 75 car per day increase for it to pencil?
It's difficult to give you that number right now because since this started in 2017, the building costs have gone up
Sure.
exponentially. So
Yeah.
it's really hard to say where the break-even point's going to be at this point. So
Mhm.
that's not a number that I can really give you.
Okay, I'm just trying to get a sense of what your expectations are about the increased amount of cars going through the, so you're kind of thinking if you're at, let's say on average, 100 cars per day coming in and out, that then it could go up to 175 cars per day?
The potential is there, yes. Really, what I would like is if I could get every car that came in here for service to get a car wash, that would be optimum.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
And
Yeah.
Commissioner Hogg, just one note on that, the traffic study is a little conservative on that. If you look at page 13 of the traffic study, not only does it sort of assume that there's up to 400 trips, and that would be sort of for the standalone, freeway, by the freeway kind of side car wash. And it assumes that a quarter of the car wash trips would be generated, that are already being generated by the existing customers.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Commissioner Kelly, you have any further questions?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. What I didn't ask about was when you're going out Abbott to turn north onto Petaluma. I mean, it's sort of crazy there now. And for people to be able to get over so they can take a left-hand turn, the block before, I forget what it's called, the block before Sebastopol, it's crazy now. And I'm just not sure. I know it was studied as an intersection. However, it just seems like it's unacceptable to add that many more cars trying to get out of there. So I'm just going to put that in as I don't know if there's a way to answer that. Do we have our traffic consultant here tonight?
We do not.
Okay.
And again, depending on the commission's, if we're not able to answer these questions, we can work to get them at a next meeting if needed.
Okay. And then I know that the applicant was answering questions. And so why is the short sound wall? Would it help the business to the east if the sound wall was longer going north?
Going north, the sound wall is going to run into the existing building. And
Okay.
so
It's on the property line, it looks like.
I believe it is, yes.
Wow, that is closer than I thought. Okay. All right. So that answers that. I think that's my questions right now. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have any questions myself. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up for public comment. And how would you like to handle that, Ms. Armstrong?
Let's see. We do have a number of folks from the public. I'm just going to go ahead and, if you want, call on people. I see one hand raised. If I see a visual and you're just raising your hand physically as well, that works, or through the chat window. If you don't have visuals and you want to, you can chat to the host, myself, Carrie, and we will let you know. We have Nadine who has her hand raised, so I'm going to go ahead and unmute her and go ahead. And we do have can you see the timer, the 3-minute timer, Nadine? Okay, so that'll tell you when your 3 minutes is up. Thank you.
And you need to unmute yourself, Nadine, please. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Nadine Sanders. Thank you for taking our comments tonight, commissioners. I have a vested interest in this. I am right next door in the Ford building property. I'm a tenant here. And I'm sitting right now about 40 feet from where this is going to be. I have one comment based on the good information I've heard tonight. I think it would be really excellent to find a car wash that is just like this, so that the sound and the vapor could really be studied, because it sounds like none of us here are familiar with the kind of car wash that's being proposed. Number two, I'm very curious about the fact that a car wash essentially is a drive-through, and there will be cars sitting there idling. And I have not lived in Sebastopol my whole life, just the last 5 years, but I do know that the city has been very specific about not allowing drive-throughs. So that's just something I want to bring up from the public. If this car wash is allowed right here in the center of town, you may have people like CVS and other places who also then want to have drive-throughs. So I'm concerned about the consistency of what the city has done with this in the past. And then thirdly, I haven't heard it brought up at all, and I think you might want to consider this fact. This area of town has really been changing. There used to be a Chevy dealership. This was the old Ford. Across the street, there were Apple warehouses. There was a train next door at Gravenstein Station. And what it's been turning into is retail and offices. And I haven't heard this addressed at all. Your vision for this town of Sebastopol, which I know you're trying to court a luxury hotel, and there's more and more foot traffic because of the Barlow and the restaurants. I don't see a car wash right in this area as consistent with all the retail and the offices. All my other concerns like sound and traffic, you have addressed very well, but those are the three things I wanted to bring up, and I hope you will consider my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, and next we have Ted Luthen, and then I see Martin Reed after that.
Hello, thanks for letting me speak. I appreciate all the questions that have been asked, and a lot of my concerns I think have been answered today. But I think the biggest one, just like the previous speaker said, I think it would be very short-sighted to approve this without actually seeing one of these in action. The only one that I'm familiar with that looks just like this is the Splash Car Wash. And a friend of mine had a car dealership right across the street that had to close because of the noise and because of the vapor that settled on all of his cars right across the street. And if you've ever been to that thing, it's a noisy beast outside of it. And I know the designer said that they don't use that technology and they have sound deadening and all this sort of stuff. But I think it would be very prudent to actually go to one of these facilities that's built just like this one, stand out in front of it and see what's coming out. What is the thing breathing and what does it sound like? I also agree with the previous speaker that it seems a little strange that in the center of our downtown, which is supposed to be pedestrian friendly and prohibit drive-throughs, it seems a little strange that a drive-through car wash is being considered, and that doesn't really seem compatible with a pedestrian friendly downtown. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then now Martin Reed.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Martin Reed, and I'm the CEO of a tech services company with offices on the adjacent parcel. So I'm actually sitting in my office right now about 25 feet from these proposed dryers of the car wash. So our second story office here has large windows that are overlooking the Benedetti property. And currently it can be a very noisy neighbor. So Mr. Hogan, I know that you were inside the building and it's possible it was quiet at that time, but periodically there is a loudspeaker that is used for communication on the property. There are cars or trucks that are starting, turning off, honking. There's beeping from large trucks backing up. There are power tools that are used for oil and tire changes. So it can already be a very noisy facility. And I shudder to think what an additional 77 decibels, which is comparable to standing 50 feet from a freeway, would do to this area, which is a really nice area. We have the Redota Trail, we have the Barlow. So very concerned about the noise. In addition, the traffic on Sebastopol Avenue can be very, very difficult at certain times of the day, particularly between Petaluma and Morris. And cars turning left into the facility, cars turning left out of the facility. I think we concluded that there would be about 8 to 10 car lengths between possibly the city's busiest intersection at Highway 12 and Petaluma and Barnes, where customers could be slowing down to a couple miles per hour in order to make that right turn. So I think the traffic on this road already can be very difficult. And I'm afraid to think that what would happen if potentially double the amount of cars were frequenting the Benedetti property. In addition to the noise and the traffic, this project will consume large amounts of water and power and could possibly contribute to downtown flooding by adding thousands of square feet of impervious paving. As we know, this is right next to the Redota Trail and the Laguna, part of what makes this town so special. Page 13, table 8 fails to include our building in the noise monitoring survey. And I think as you've heard tonight, we are possibly the most likely to be affected by the significant increase in noise and all the cars idling, all of the emissions from that. I think we're all here because we love the charm of Sebastopol. And I would urge the commission to expand the ordinance against drive-through uses to include car washes and to reject this project as it currently stands and to keep the charm in this downtown area. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I do not see any other hands raised. I see one potential other member of the public who isn't with the applicants or on the commission.
I would like to
Huck Hensley, do you want to make a comment?
Yes, I'm sorry my video
Perfect.
to be working, but I'm the owner of the Jason Ford building, and I'm usually happy to hear about investment in new projects, but this use just creates too many liabilities. I think Martin was pretty eloquent in expressing the problems that tenants are going to face. I too like the direction that Sebastopol downtown has taken the past few years. The pedestrian wayfinding, the signage, the bike lanes, the narrowing of traffic lanes on the highway, all that makes for a more livable, inviting, quieter, slower city. And I think that's really widely appreciated. And this use just flies in the face of all that hard-won progress. It will make a lot of noise. That's why there's a noise study. It will generate traffic. It kind of makes a mockery of the city's attempt to persuade residents to save water in the drought. And the city's wanted to encourage downtown infill housing, and no one will build within earshot of a car wash. I would like to build some infill housing on the back of my property. It's really pretty nice there. It faces the Laguna. It's pretty quiet. It's about 300 feet from the street. And now it would be within just over the fence of the car wash. I asked a neighbor of mine who's just an ordinary guy, a common sense contractor, if it would be good or urban planning to locate a car wash downtown next to an office building. And it took him about 5 seconds to say, no, I don't think that's a good idea. The tenants, the office workers aren't going to like that. That would be poor planning. The sound wall shows the noise projecting over the property line plainly exceeds that allowed by the city ordinance by about 15 decibels. It's black and white. Just read it. Don't look at the conclusions. And the traffic study's got to be rerun using the same customer count as the acoustic study. The number of customers varies between those two by a great deal and varies again by tonight's estimate. That's about all I have at this point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Fernandez. That looks like that's it for public comment tonight. I will note that I can't recall if Dave did during his report that we did receive comments from some of the folks who spoke this evening that are in your packet, as well as a number of other comments that have also been transmitted to the commission, both in the original staff report as well as uploaded online and forwarded on to the commission this afternoon.
Could you comment on one of the questions regarding drive-throughs and how the drive-through car wash differs from that?
Sure, I would be happy to. So this issue did come up in the 2017 preliminary review that the Planning Commission had for this project. At that time, there was a brand new general plan that was adopted in 2016. And there were, I don't know if the zoning ordinance updates that were adopted in November of 2018 were underway yet, but it was known that there was going to be a major zoning ordinance update to address the general plan as well as some other issues. In that process, the zoning ordinance regulations defined car washes as a type of automotive use, not as a drive-through, similar to an oil change or getting your tires or any other type of automotive service. You physically can't do it without driving your car to and sometimes through the equipment that is doing that. And so that was defined differently than a drive-through. The zoning ordinance update, there was actually a moratorium on drive-throughs, obviously, prior to the ordinance update, but the zoning ordinance that we have now that was adopted in 2018 continues to define drive-throughs as for other uses that aren't automotive like this, and does prohibit them in any district. And I think one of the things we also are looking at is this is in some ways an infill to the property, which already has the automotive uses on it. So, and then I think for the question about the car washes of the same model, I believe, Ed, there is one or two that are local because you had suggested them to staff after the initial application. Are you able to address that question?
Yes, I can. There are two now operating. The first, and it was used in the sound study, Coffee at Piner, 24/7. It's a 76 gas station. The producers in that case are beside the building in the equipment room. There's another one at 1240 Mendocino Avenue, which is called Wash Barn, which was just opened first of the year, where our equipment is upstairs, and it's very different than the splash application. And so we had to do a sound study at the Wash Barn, and prior to opening, to make sure that we're consistent with the sound mitigation requirements at the backside of sidewalk, which we were able to comply with.
I guess I'm muted. No. I just had a question, Ed. You said you had sound requirements at the back sidewalk?
Yeah, there's the sound studies for properties have guidelines. And so the back of sidewalk, which would be a condition here, which is, I'm going to guess 150 feet away, is I think it's 70 dB, and it depends on the city. And so we would be far less. We're nearly that at the exit into the wash bay. So there would be no, let's see, we would not be exceeding the sound, the ambient sound at the back of sidewalk out on, at any property.
And perhaps I can clarify for the commission what the city's regulations are. We do have a noise ordinance. It is relative to the requirement is to measure the noise at the property line, wherever that property line is. For the front property line, obviously that's often the back of sidewalk is the property line. But in this case, we know that the more sensitive property line is the eastern property line. And that does need to meet the noise ordinance as well.
And to add on what the director said, that was one of the reasons that we requested the supplemental analysis looking at the placement of a sound wall from the exit of the dryer unit up to the corner of the adjacent building, because that appeared to be the location where there was a potential for noise at the property line.
Which
And that
we
was the
agreed with.
reason.
We agreed with that.
Any other questions? So I'm going to bring this back to commission for questions or comments, suggestions on direction from here. Vice Chair Fritz.
I'm happy to get started. I mean, first off, it seems like there's a lot of obviously questions around acoustics, and I don't know how other commissioners feel, but I feel like there's a lot of very technical questions that we have that don't seem to be able to be answered without an acoustic consultant available. So I would suggest that before we make a decision, we at least do that. But I also have just sort of some general comments. Yeah, I do have some concerns about the fact that this is in our downtown core zoning district. We've been making efforts and I think some success in recent years over making downtown Sebastopol a more, people-oriented, not car-oriented, although I think we still have a long way to go. But we're obviously taking steps. Barlow's been fairly successful. There's the bike lanes, and there's a lot of opportunity for, potential infill development and getting more people, more businesses, more residences downtown. And I don't think personally that this is setting a precedent for, well, it's already an existing automotive use. It's downtown. We don't really like that, but we'll let them expand their existing automotive use downtown. I mean, there's other downtown businesses that are automotive oriented that if we let this business expand the auto functions of their property, there's nothing to, we're sort of setting a precedent for all the others. There's the smog test place that's next to the Basso building. If they wanted to put a car wash in or a Jiffy Lube or something like that, I mean, if we let this person do it, then we have to let that person do it. And there's the auto repair place south on Main Street by the Hip Pizzazz and the Taqueria. Same thing. If they wanted to redevelop that and add an additional automotive use after we approve this project, it's sort of setting a precedent for continuing to do that. And I just feel that this isn't really it's not the right use for this site. I do have a great deal of concern for the adjacent properties. I know Huck has been thinking about, doing residential at the back of his property, but if there's a car wash next to it, it really discourages him from doing that. And I think we need more of that type of development downtown. We want more housing downtown. So I would hate for a car wash to go in and then Huck say, well, I don't want to do this. It kind of devalues my property and my ability to develop. There's also an adjacent property to the rear, to the south, that's vacant that, could also be an apartment or, multifamily housing kind of property. But again, if there's a car wash next door, it really discourages that kind of development of that property. And, so I'm really generally not in favor, I guess I would say, of allowing this use to go forward. I think the variance is problematic. I don't quite see why this property is is unique from any other property that we would need to give them a variance on that floor area ratio. The idea of the floor area ratio when we went through the general plan update was to make people do more mixed use residential, commercial development downtown. That's what we wanted. And a floor area ratio of 0.2, just doesn't meet that. And I'm not really in favor of the variance. I'm not really in favor of the use. I think the 6 foot, I don't really understand how the 6 foot sound wall for that short a distance does anything to benefit the second floor tenants next door. I can see how maybe the Chimera space that's right behind the sound wall would benefit from the sound wall. But if you're on the second floor of that building, that sound wall is not preventing the sound from going up, over the wall. So I do have concerns from that aspect as well. So I guess I'll leave my comments at there for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Dauch, you have any?
Yeah, sure. I'll jump in. I remember when this came to the commission for an advisory hearing, and I remember that we discussed the noise at some length. We did compare it to some other car washes at the time, and it is significantly less noisy than some of the ones we experience, including Broughton Robbie's. Be that as it may, at the time, I think the commission's position was generally in favor of this location for this development. It came on the back of a number of applications, or at least explorations around gas stations, issues with the current car wash, where these things could go generally. We were looking at the general plan, and we discussed, if you look at the main streets through Sebastopol, where could you put a facility for vehicles, either gas station, etc. And the fact is there are none that do not affect residences, except not only this one, but except a very few, including this site, which is currently in automotive use. And while I'm appreciative of the sentiments of the concerns, I feel personally that this is an appropriate place for this use based on what's there now, what available space we have for these kinds of uses. And I think additionally for the need to serve our broad community in town, when we talk about hotels or things that are going to generate pedestrian traffic and commerce, we hear complaints of gentrification and not becoming Hillsburg. But when we talk about practical uses, the unique local businesses putting in a facility that clearly has some demand, and there's been a lot of comments in favor, then Hillsburg, suddenly the gentrification argument seems to evaporate. So I think it's important that we do cater to the needs of our community, and I think this does so. I think it relieves some of the issues with the current car wash in the north end of town, and I am of course sensitive to the noise to the offices immediately adjacent, and I think that needs to be addressed. I think if you're reading the noise study fairly carefully, I think it has been addressed. I think they have used real data from real car washes. Not making things up, not trying to make it better than it is. I think it's an honest evaluation of the noise. And 70 decibels for that rather small area, that's a vacuum cleaner, or it's a loudish noise, yes, but it's not a freeway. So I think we have to be careful to evaluate the impacts appropriately, and I think we have good materials to do that. There may be some nuanced questions about acoustics. How does it affect the upstairs offices? May be a fair and important question. As to traffic, I feel the same applies. We are, as we've heard from Mr. Rees, the potential impact on with a really successful rollout of this business might be 70 additional trips. We're also adding a really good entry and exit to that site. So frankly, I think while I, again, appreciate the general concern, we have a traffic study here that does point to limited impacts. The reason it uses a large number of cars compared to, or the numbers are different for the traffic study and the noise study is to do with the consultants trying to be conservative, trying to look at what the reality is based on maximum usage or sensible approximation of maximum usage. I don't know exactly, but I think we have material that gives us a lot of good information, and our concerns that are natural for us living here about Highway 12 and everything else, I appreciate them. And I think we live in a congested zone right there, but adding an entry to this site and an exit and better flow, I think ultimately is going to have minimal impact, as really the traffic study indicates. I think a really careful reading of those documents bears this out. That notwithstanding, I respect the considerations of additional questions, but I'm in favor of the variance, and I'm in favor of the project, and my position would be to recommend forward to the City Council.
Good, thank you. Commissioner Ottinger.
Yes, I think that the project could be a really good project. I like the traffic circulation with the exit on Barnes. I think it'll make it easier when I get my tires changed to walk home and to leave the facility instead of turning left onto the highway. So I think that is a good benefit. I think it's a benefit to have the car-oriented uses together. I think that's a little bit of the philosophy of their closeness in the downtown core, that they're centralized together. I think the business is well respected and the place is always clean. And I appreciate that you'll be redoing the landscaping and that the vacant lot will be improved through the addition of the car wash. Excuse me, I need more light. I like that you're using the recycled water, and I like that the building itself doesn't look like a typical car wash, but it looks like it fits in with other buildings, although at some point we're going to get tired of looking at just that. We'll need a more eclectic look, but I think this is far better than your typical car wash. I'm okay with the floor area ratio because, in fact, these stalls with the vacuums are part of the business. It's as if you just don't need to put walls over them unless, of course, you want to add some shade and some solar panels. That might not be a bad idea. But on the negative side, I feel like we've been through the car wash problem with neighbors in this town, and I really don't feel comfortable with the sound report that we've seen. I don't feel comfortable with the lack of information on the vapors, which people have witnessed themselves when there are no doors and no collection system for that. And I feel like this is a really good opportunity to take an existing idea and make it the kind of a car wash that you'd want in your downtown next door to other neighbors. And I think that that could happen, but there are things that would need to be done. One of them in particular is that we're going to need doors. The other one is that I don't think the sound wall that's only 6 feet high works, but since the building is an insulated concrete building, it could easily have T structures that where the wall itself is the building could extend in both directions an appropriate number of feet away from the building and shield the neighbors at the same height as the building wall itself, with even a covered roof over some parts of it that would help contain and reduce the noise so that nobody was concerned about it. I think that's the kind of a facility that would be appropriate in this location that took the neighbors, the vapors, and the noise under consideration without resorting to a 6-foot concrete wall. I think it could be done. I'm not an acoustical engineer and I'm not an architect, but I would beg that if the applicant wants to proceed here with the recommendation to the council that they're willing to make adjustments to the building so that it really is an appropriate and good neighbor, and that our town doesn't have to go through the years of pain and suffering we have had with other neighbors in this situation. I think it's really important that the property next door be suitable for housing. And if that's going to happen, then, and if the neighborhood is going to be walkable and enjoyable, we're going to have to start reducing some of the sounds of our businesses. And I think this, doing so would show good effort on the part of the applicant to get something that the town can be proud of and not struggle with for years and years. I don't want to go specifically through the negative declaration, but I wouldn't recommend approving it without upfront changes to the building. And I say that because even if the sound is okay and meets the standards of our law for an industrial area, it might not be the case for the existing neighbors next door who in the future might be housing or right currently are now doing things outdoors with their customers. So I think that the neg deck is not appropriate without looking at a different plan for solving the sound problem for those people. Either that or a real thorough study. And my concern is that once the building is built and you get the studies, the neighbors next door will still complain about that sound and they'll still complain about the vapors. And then you're looking at a retrofit situation on those doors. So I would like to see that happen up front, that we create something that really is appropriate for being in our downtown. As far as the traffic and the stalling, I think we're working at getting cleaner cars. My car wouldn't have exhaust if I were waiting in that line. And I think more and more we'll see cars that don't. So I think we can move toward the future with that. So I think I've given you some ideas where I would be happy to say, yes, I'm all for it. But right now I would have a no recommendation and I would have specific changes to the staff report in mitigating some issues in the EIR. I think that's it for now.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Lindenbush.
Thank you, Chair Fernandez. So before I start, I just want to thank in particular Vice Chair Fritz and Commissioner Ottinger for their comments. And I tend to agree with a lot of them. Where I'm finding conflict with the benefit and detriment of this project, I think sort of delineates between the benefits of regional planning and the detriments of downtown planning. From a regional planning perspective, this type of project could be in line with some climate goals of making people just VMT, vehicle miles traveled. People have to drive less far to get the type of car wash experience that they want. And that's been reflected in comments across the board. So I think that could be a potential benefit for our regional community. In terms of downtown planning, I don't think that this is a type of project that is consistent with the goals of what our city wants to establish for our downtown core. I do hear the concerns about such a project like this and such an intensification like this, leading to a potential reduction in the suitability of neighboring sites for housing or commercial development moving forward that is in line with the goals of the downtown, the general plan, our housing element, everything to do with our downtown. So that's where I have the conflict a little bit on this project. I do think there are some unanswered questions in terms of the water vapor and the sound and the fact that this is, just because there aren't people who live nearby right now, doesn't mean that the sites nearby are not going to have people living on them for the decades to come. And I didn't really see a lot in the staff report in terms of any environmental impact on the Joe Rodota Trail or any of the surrounding, the Laguna. This is an environmentally sensitive site, even if it's not required to be considered under certain elements of CEQA. I think the environmental elements are still something that are worth considering. So for those reasons, I'm sort of leaning toward no, just because I think that we have a lot of unanswered questions from the commission. And I just don't know if this is exactly the type of project that we need to be looking at for downtown Sebastopol. So with that, I do have respect for the applicant for bringing it forward and for doing a really good job of trying to meet some of the demands of our downtown and the expectations of our community in terms of what a project like this could look like. And I do also want to echo Commissioner Ottinger on and others who have expressed the benefit of having this connection on Abbott. I think it would be really helpful in terms of traffic. So traffic isn't really a concern. It's just more the general character of the downtown and opportunities moving forward.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Howe?
Thank you, Chair Fernandez. I feel that my thoughts are very much in line with my previous commissioners. I feel that this would be a good service for our community and for West County. There's clearly a need for it. I'm also looking forward and thinking about, you know, we do have an urgent need for infill housing in our downtown, and for environmental reasons, for viability reasons. I also am still concerned a bit about the traffics going in both the east and west directions on the 12, just because there's a crosswalk as well, right where Barnes Avenue is. And so if you have a pedestrian crossing and then someone turning into the car wash, you basically might not get any movement at all across Petaluma Avenue for an entire light cycle. And to me, that area is already very congested. So I just have concerns about the combination of a right-hand turn and the crosswalk creating further congestion in that area. I appreciated what Commissioner Ottinger said about, you know, if we truly, you know, to make the facility truly a good neighbor so it doesn't inhibit further office space or residential building. I think those are part of the priorities of the downtown. And yeah, so those are my concerns at this point.
Thank you. Commissioner Kelly?
I have to say I agree with everybody. Very thoughtful discussions. The issue around sound is a big one. I don't know if there's a way of even moving the building further, like Commissioner Ottinger said, a little further to the west or a different orientation a little bit. I have concerns about traffic on Barnes, and I'm wondering if this is just a suggestion, as you're coming out of the car wash at Barnes and Abbott, is there a way of on the applicant's property to put a sign that says there's a no left turn further north on Barnes? Just to give them a heads up so that they already haven't gone in there. Then they see the sign at the corner of Sebastopol and Barnes. Then you're sort of stuck. You got to go right. So I think for folks to plan that that's not what you're supposed to do, that maybe there could be a little signage as you exit the property. And I am very concerned about if in fact the county does purchase the Sebastopol Inn, now we're going to have full-time people living there rather than more of a transient hotel. And so I have a little concern around the sound going to that furthest east built, the eastern part of that structure. We haven't really talked about it. So I'm going to have to agree that I don't believe this is the appropriate type of business for our downtown core, especially when it's so near an office building and the property's potential usage for mixed use. That's it.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Kelly. Well, very well spoken and described comments from the commission. Thank you for those descriptions. You know, I have some of the similar concerns as far as needing additional information. I would like to see if there's a way to make this work, if at all possible. You know, we talk about supporting our local business, and Mark Reese, Mr. Reese has had that business. He's done a very good job as far as being a local patron and taking care of the needs of local customers. Also, not only trips would be saved, but also people washing cars at their home, which would waste a lot more water than that area. It is zoned for this. We just did the general plan. And so, but I do have a concern that of putting that facility in and then also making it, eliminating the possibility of adding housing. I think that's something that we need to look at and address. You know, everybody talks about housing needs. And so maybe there's a way to make this work and get that around there. You're never going to eliminate 100% of the sound. It is downtown. There are going to be noises. That's part of the, part of living in the downtown area. So, but it's just getting it to be reasonable. And then also have some questions with the negative declaration as well. Some unanswered questions. So, I'd like to get more information before my decision, but I don't know if the other commissioners would also like to do that, or so I heard a couple of them say they're looking possibly for denial, or if they would be open to hearing more information before making a final decision.
I have a comment.
Yes, go ahead.
I listening to the balance of comments, it feels to me that there are, if we could hone in on, specific elements that would be helpful to understand better or explore. I think I share the sentiment that I've made the sentiment clear that I'm in favor of this as in principle. So if there's something we can do to either continue this meeting, to invite the sound engineer to join us, or other people that could help answer questions, then I think, I'd be in favor of that. And I wonder how the other commissioners may feel about that. Maybe it's understanding what the noise levels would be inside of the office space adjacent, or if indeed the wall should be higher, or if a roof structure over the wall would make a significant difference. I think these are all great questions. But I do feel that this is a service that's needed, and of course it would be great to make it without eliminating the possibility of having housing adjacent. And Kathy, I appreciate your comments in that regard. So if my question to the commission would be, is the right thing to continue this, to ask for the sound engineer and possibly the traffic engineer to be present for some questions, try and answer some concerns to get to a point where we can make an informed decision.
Thank you.
I'll jump in and say, I'll be open to hearing more, getting more. I think we definitely need more information. But on the acoustics, and I'd be willing to go, to these other facilities to see how they operate and see, what the noise levels are. But I guess maybe I have a question for staff in terms of this kind of variance and precedent setting for other downtown automotive oriented sites that, if we grant this, application, all of these different, variances and use permits and such, and someone else comes forward and they say, well, look, you let Benedetti's do it, we want to do it too. Is this a precedent setting kind of issue that, or should I not be concerned about that?
I don't think the commission should be concerned about a precedent. There are a couple of things that are pretty particular to this site. One is, the FAR requirement, minimum FAR requirement is only applicable to vacant sites or complete redevelopment of sites. If and for this particular project, if they weren't doing the subdivision, the minimum FAR would not be an issue. So it's only the fact that they're doing, it would be simply considered an infill and an intensification of an existing use, and it would not be subject to the minimum FAR. That's one of the unusual things, characteristics of this particular project. So I don't think that is something to be concerned about in terms of a precedent for other sites.
But wouldn't that be a precedent? So say, the smog shop said, we want to put in a Jiffy Lube on our property. We're going to do a lot split. So we have the smog site and we have the Jiffy Lube site. Oh, look, we have a Jiffy Lube piece of property. We're not going to meet the floor area ratio requirement because we just did a lot split. And, I think the whole thing is a precedent setting, a way to get around the floor area ratio.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of others, like for instance, the smog shop, I don't think they have the minimum frontage required. So there are a number of other characteristics. Plus there's this, which is what a lot of the very good discussion tonight about is this an appropriate site for it? So I personally am comfortable that you're not setting a precedent, that each site is unique and the layout of each site is unique and in terms of the variance to the FAR.
Well, I definitely think we need more information before we make a decision on this. I don't think, given a lot of the questions around the acoustics in particular, and just some of the other, possibly traffic issues that have come up, and without those consultants here to give us kind of more specific answers, I think, I definitely don't think we should make a decision on this tonight, unless the applicant is in some hurry for us to do so.
And I can note from a staff perspective, we certainly can, and I apologize for not having those consultants. It's always hard to judge whether or not how detailed the conversation will get. But we can arrange to potentially have them at the next Planning Commission meeting, where we have some availability for that. If the commission wanted to continue to date certain, we can work. And given the remote format, it's actually one of the blessings is it's actually a little bit easier to get people, consultants, although both of these are very local consultants.
Okay. Also a question for the applicant or whoever would be appropriate. As far as the viability of any modifications of the current building plan, is that realistic? Has that already been looked at? Is there any possibility of any changes?
Yes, sir. Ed Blair with Tunnel Vision. Actually, we have a project down in Berkeley where we have residents adjacent, as would be the Ford building. And the residents are anxious that the project go forward. And there was a little more modification to the exit in than is planned that we can provide. And I'm speaking on behalf of Mark and what we don't want is to build this project and then have bad relationship with the neighbors. That's not what we're looking for. We don't want the complaints. We're very familiar with the challenges that Sebastopol has had. I have been involved in it directly and indirectly, and have gone to sites and have met the neighbors of those of your sites there in Sebastopol. Been actively trying to resolve the problems. So Tunnel Vision is also a Bay Area Green, which started out as Sonoma Green. And so we're concerned about all of the things that the commissioners are concerned with. And we want to get this right on behalf of all of us. So yes, there's some I don't want to say minor, but there are some things that we can do to address the concerns, specifically to sound, and I can't really speak on behalf of traffic.
Okay, and I don't know if it's realistic to be able to present those. I'm assuming that would the traffic, or excuse me, the sound individuals be here for our following meeting, or is that realistic, or how that would work there, Carrie?
We can contact them for either the next meeting or the meeting after. Either one would work. Obviously, their availability we'll need to confirm, but
Yeah, and I'd like to see it coordinated with Tunnel Vision or whoever would be appropriate, so that they have time to come back and maybe make some suggestions as well.
I support continuing as well. And I think it'd be nice to get that information on the sound and then to look at some of the conditions of approval that we would recommend to the city council so that they actually have something that reflects some of the things that we think about, even though the final conclusion might be a denial of recommendation to the council. It'd be nice of them to have some things that they might consider.
Okay.
And Chair Fernandez, one of the things that might be helpful is to, if the applicant can address some of the questions or concerns about potentially modifying the location of the building, or as Commissioner Ottinger had suggested the idea of having doors from the get-go. I don't know if they're able to respond tonight or if that's something they need to study. But that
I just like to,
I'm hearing questions from the commission that would need to be looked at by the applicants.
I just wanted to clarify, I didn't suggest moving the building to another site. I just was suggesting extension of the east wall, north and south at the wall height versus building a retaining wall. That was my only suggestion about changes to the building and roof.
Director Svanstrom, if I could answer that question. Patrick Slater, project architect, and regarding the design of the building itself, what you see is something that is extremely preliminary. Planning Commission is not design review. It's to give an idea of the massing of the building. And regarding the sound study and the information, the application and the packet was put together in anticipation of the two independent studies being done, the traffic and the sound study. So anything that is reflected in the application packet that's supplied by the applicant is prior to any of the recommendations that subsequently were made by either the planning staff or their consultants in the traffic and noise arenas. So we're absolutely open to looking at the building, discussing new ways of addressing the sound. What we're looking at is just a circumstance of timing and what's reflected at what point in history.
Thank you.
Do we need a motion or a vote to continue on this? I believe.
Yes, and if you're able to continue it to a date certain, you can always do that. And if the consultants for some reason aren't available, then we can notify everybody and renotice it if needed. If we continue it to date certain, we won't need to notify, renotice. And obviously we've got a number of the neighbors here, so they would know tonight when the next hearing would be. So that's always my suggestion.
Yeah, do you have a suggestion as far as the next meeting or the meeting after?
So if it's just getting the consultants, I think the next meeting, certainly we should be able to get them. That's 3 weeks away, given the extra weekends at the end of September. So if they're available, they should have plenty of time to prepare for it.
Okay. Well, I'd like to propose that we continue it to that date, which would be, what's a specific date is that?
That is October 13th, I believe, but let me check before anybody makes a motion. Yes, that is the October 13th meeting.
Okay. All right. So at this point, I'll entertain a motion for continuance. Someone would like to make it.
I move that we continue this meeting to the Planning Commission meeting of October 13th to get additional feedback from, the initial study consultants.
And I second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any other further discussion on?
I guess
Okay.
I'd also throw in there if people can make it to maybe one of these other sites to see one of a similar, I think that's probably a good idea too, for the commissioners to try to visit those center the locations.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Fritz. If we could get a list of potential sites to visit, that would be very helpful prior to the October 13th meeting. That way we can actually see the equipment and stand in front of it. I think that would be extremely helpful in our decision making.
Yeah, and it should also be noted if it's exactly the same or if it's a little bit different, because if we go there and we see that it's maybe noisier, that may not be a fair comparison. Okay, we have
Staff,
motion. Go ahead.
Mr. Commission, maybe we can work with the tunnel vision people to get a list of the other sites in the area and see how they're different, and then forward that on to the commission so that when you do, if you do get a chance, you'll know the differences between the projects.
Yeah, good suggestion.
And my apologies for interrupting.
No, that was good. Okay, we have motion and second for continuance. Ask for roll call.
Okay. Hold on, let me get my list of folks. I don't miss anybody. Commissioner Dauch.
All right.
Commissioner Haug.
Aye.
Commissioner Kelly.
Aye.
Commissioner Lindenbusch.
Aye.
Commissioner Ottinger.
Aye.
Vice Chair Fritz.
Aye.
And Chair Fernandez.
Aye.
And so the motion passes and the hearing will be continued to the October 13th meeting.
Okay. Thank you very much, and thank you to everyone who came or for this or appeared on Zoom for this item. Okay, we're going to move on to regular agenda item number 8, and we have the Ice Park walking tour, and then I'll hand it over to our planning director, who will then probably hand it over to Commissioner Hall.
Thank you. Yes, and I do want to thank Commissioner Haug for helping put this together and organize it and get it off the ground. We have separated this into kind of 2 parts. The first is instruction for the walking tour, with the intent of that happening basically prior to the next Planning Commission meeting, October 14th. And then we do have Dante Del Prete, the Superintendent of Public Works, as well as obviously myself, available for the October 27th Planning Commission meeting to have the follow-up discussion. With that, I will ask Commissioner Haug to give a brief report and instructions.
Thank you for supporting this idea and participating in a kind of an unusual format. The idea is to, I tried to make the instructions as straightforward as possible. And so the idea is that we will individually walk the park, and using the 2013 master plan as our guiding document. And I called out specific pages that I found to be very useful. And if you, I also, for me personally, I work best with paper documents. So I just listed the pages that I thought might be helpful for those who also like paper documents. And then I, as Director Swanson said, the second part of it is my own kind of thoughts and reflections, just in terms of questions I'm asking myself as I'm looking at the plan. One of my considerations is, can we make small improvements to the parks that will increase usability and heighten user experience, given the fact that our capacity to raise money through fundraising might take a while or might be limited due to the pandemic. So that is my final paragraph. Asks the commissioners to list 5 primary uses or needs of the park and how we could support them through Measure M improvements. And I was thinking if we ourselves generate a list that perhaps at some point, if we have the capacity, we could send out a community survey using our list as a beginning jumping off platform.
Okay, good. Thank you for putting this together. Well done. Any questions at this point? Okay, looks like we have our directions and instructions. Thank you again. And we'll move on to the planning director's report.
Thank you, Chair Fernandez. So a few items to report about. Let's see, the recent city council actions at their last meeting, they did approve the second reading, so have adopted the tobacco retail license ordinance. And that's an ordinance that will, in the future, limit the number of establishments that can sell tobacco. I believe we currently have 16 establishments that sell tobacco. The ordinance adopted would limit any future, they will all be sort of grandfathered in, however, any future permits would be subject to a limit of 1 per 2,000 residents. So we're just below 8,000 people, so that would mean 3 establishments is sort of the metric that would be used in the future. It also does prohibit pharmacies from also selling tobacco. And it also restricts significant tobacco retailers. And so for the commission's reference, there are, or as of last year, there were 3. One was the Homegrown Glass, which came before this commission for a conditional use permit to continue a non-conforming use, which was indicated by the commission that they were going to deny the project in light of the work on the tobacco retail license ordinance that was being done. There are 2 other significant tobacco retail establishments in Sebastopol currently. One is the Green Zone on South Main Street, and the other is a cigarette shop that's up by the Lucky's in the Redwood Marketplace. And so they will now be considered non-conforming uses, and they will not be able to transfer their license, but they will be able to continue so long as they are under the same ownership. And one of the other significant components of it was to ban flavored tobacco products because of the marketing and the interest by youth in those products. I believe right before the first reading for that, they were actually banned at the state level and signed by the governor. So that actually will be, it sounds like there's some legal challenges or potentially a ballot measure against that ban at the state level. But if that goes through, they would also be banned at the state level. If the state ban doesn't get implemented, then they would still be banned locally. And so we joined Sonoma County and a couple other communities with that ban. The other significant programs, the City Council did pass a microloan program for Sebastopol businesses, and also some changes to the facade improvement program, which includes a higher level of reimbursement for business owners, as well as having increasing the funding for that program. We did get some public comment at the last City Council meeting on that, and are looking at a couple of additional changes to make the program easier to access and lower the barriers for folks on that. However, the first kind of quarterly deadline for the facade improvement program is, I believe, October 20th, and those applications will be reviewed at the the first meeting of the DRB in November. And I believe if you're on the city's email list, you would have gotten an email about that either yesterday or today for both the microloan and the facade improvement program. And then in terms of parklets, Vice Chair Fritz has commented at last meeting along with a couple other people. We are meeting as staff and with a couple of folks tomorrow to see if we can further the idea of parklets along Main Street with Caltrans. That is, the Caltrans is a fairly large barrier, but we do have some new information thanks to Paul and a couple others. Saratoga apparently was able to get some parklets established through Caltrans, and so hoping to use some of that information. And then lastly, at a regional planning level, the every 8 years we are assigned a regional housing needs allocation, which is our the state hands each region a number of housing units. They should be producing over a period of 8 years. Each region, and for us that's ABAG, so it's the 9-county Bay Area, sets a methodology on how to distribute those. That group has been meeting since last October, I believe, and they are looking at adopting a methodology based on the Regional Plan Bay Area 2050. The methodology for that isn't quite finalized yet, and we are coordinating at a county level to make sure that we understand all the factors that go into that, particular for Sonoma County, to make sure fire and floods as hazards are included as good planning measures. So that is moving forward, and so the commission is aware our current allocation requirement for that for housing is 120 units from, I believe that's 2015 through 2023. We're about halfway through that cycle, and I think we're about halfway there, especially with the townhomes that we have permitted and the ADUs that we continue to see in terms of infill housing. The overall Bay Area region is looking at a 235% increase in the target numbers. Sonoma counties and communities in Sonoma counties are looking at percentage increases that are greater than that. We are still trying to assess and work with ABAG to understand, what their methodology for the Plan Bay Area future aspects are, in terms of, why it's greater than other communities in the Bay Area that have better access to transit. So we'll continue to update you on that, but did want to let you know that that's a regional planning process that is underway and that staff is tracking closely.
Okay. Who's handling the lead on the facade and loan program in the city?
So Alan Montes is our associate planner, is the point person for that. He's the DRB staff liaison.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Questions for Plan Director report? Don't see any. Okay.
One question, sorry. I was reading through the city council meeting and I believe they discussed impact fees at that last meeting.
They did not. The only impact fees came up because they did review and hold a public hearing and adopt the user fees schedule. So those are not in, so there's two different types of fees. One is a user fee, which is really the application fee for processing applications. For anything from dog license to marriage license to building permits to planning, planning applications. But that is a separate, it's actually under the same contract, but it is a separate set of fees. The development impact fees will be coming back to this commission for review, and then your recommendation to City Council.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. That's helpful.
Okay, no other questions? And if there's nothing further, I'd like to adjourn the meeting. Thank you all for being here, and social distance, physical distance, social closeness. Remember that. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all very
Thank you,
much.
Chair Fernandez.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Good night.